In my opinion, this is the best path for young men. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's all going to be sexy, that in a year or two, you're going to be in Dubai with supermodels draping off your arm and laughing at your every joke, no matter how shit. It is not going to be sexy. In fact, it's going to be quite unsexy. But my friends, this is the best path forward. Now, I understand the modern world is very ambiguous, it's very confusing, especially for young men. So, what is the path forward for young men in the modern day? Well, as always, we like to look to the example of Jesus Christ himself, the best man to ever live. Now, what did he do as a young man? Now, he started preaching at 30 years old. So he never started speaking openly in society until 30. In fact, he spent his 20 years of his first existence obviously growing up as a child, but then he became a carpenter. He picked a trade and he mastered it. He built the foundations for the man he was to become. In fact, he quite frankly built foundations, and I find there's some symbolism in that. So fundamentally, as a young man, you should be focusing on building a foundation. Now, of course, that doesn't stop society being any less ambiguous. So let's break that down into sort of manageable chunks, okay? So, for example, in the life of a young man, the three important fundamentals are sun, soil, and spring, which is what I like to call them, because this is the trinity of growth. And there is also a fourth hidden aspect, which we'll discuss later in the video. You have soil, you have sun, and you have water. That makes a plant grow. But what does each actually mean? That's still ambiguous. Well, for sun, it is purpose, it is your path, and it is your provision. Okay? So this is the masculine prerogative, right? This is my purpose, right? This is following the path, the direction I want to go. And it is providing, right? It is building up some capital. It is looking after myself, leaving the nest. But then it's also looking after others, other loved ones as well. And you start to take on the responsibility as you blossom into the man that you want to become. And secondarily, we have soil, right? And the reason why soil is at the bottom, it is because it is the foundation for these two. Without these, you cannot have these, right? So in a way, this makes this one incredibly important. And it's not necessarily all glorious and an achievement as such, what it can be, but what it is soil represents your health, your vitality, your vigour, and your virility. This has to be a priority if this is in a dilapidated state. Then last, we have spring, which represents water, which is more of a feminine charge, but it's still extremely important, right? And this is fraternity, family, and the feminine. So this is the relationships in your life. This is your friendship circle. This is your relationships with your family. And of course, your dance with the feminine. What do you like with women? Can you speak with women? Are you competent with women? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a wife? These are very, very important things. And your level of success in the field, particularly with the feminine, is a huge indicator of what level you are as a man. Because I guarantee you that there's UFC fighters who literally fight men in the cage for a living. Like the boldest of men who are terrified of women. I guarantee you there's some out there. In fact, I have an inkling on a couple, but I don't want to name names. So, it's important not to disregard these battles either. So these three fundaments essentially forms the foundation upon which you can build manhood. So essentially, as a young man, you want to look at this big whirling storm of chaos that is society, right? And you want to boil it down to these three aspects. And these three aspects you want to master. Okay, you want to be on your purpose, working hard. You want to be healthy, fit, with energy. And you want to be with good friendship circles, good connections, and have lovely relationships with women and your family as well. If you master these three things, then you can, in my opinion, call yourself a man, right? And then from then on, you can build. And there is a fourth factor, which is sort of like a shadow factor, if you will. And in here, you probably can't see because my markers are terrible, but I've written spirituality. So once these three aspects have mastered, you can build upwards and build something beautiful as a man. But fundamentally, before that, you need to be focusing on these three. Because I find there's little point if you're studying the occult or the esoteric and all these, the deeper truths of life. Of course, you can ponder on them now and again and philosophies and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, if you're broke, unhealthy, and have no women or no friends, then what's the point? What is the literal point? The Bible tells us to be from this world but not of this world. So obviously we want to be not of this world, we want to be inherently spiritual beings, but we're still from this world. So you still have to play the games in which this world encompasses. But it's important to understand that these three are just foundations to facilitate your growth. And you see many men falling into the trap of being extremely successful in one or many of these, and then defining that and their ego taking over. But in reality, we have to remember these three things. We want to succeed in them and continue to succeed in them, but they facilitate growing in other manners, in more higher manners. So that is fundamentally the trinity of growth, gentlemen. And how I'd operate this, for example, is I just split. Obviously, you have sun, you have soil, you have spring, and I literally just have a game plan for each of the three of them as we speak. So I'll just break down what mine is, like in complete honesty, right? Because I'm still a young man, quite clearly. And this is the system that I personally use, and I just wanted to share it, right? So, for example, with Sun, my main mission right now is I've just got a full-time job, and I just want to work on that and do all the hours, and then I'll get up extra early, and I work on this from like 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and just grind away at this. I need to build an audience, want to build a community, and then from that we can go to an online community, then a physical community, and then so on and so forth, right? That's essentially what I'm doing, just grind out my full-time job and working on this in my spare time. That's my current goals in this. With soil, I unfortunately suffer from some chronic ailments, such as like gut health issues, which I've been working on for years and I've done vast amounts of research on. So fundamentally, all I need to do at the minute is just stay on the protocols that I've made and stay disciplined with my diet. And of course, physically, I'm always training very hard. I do weightlifting, jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. So it's just stay consistent with that and my gut health protocol. And with spring, currently what I'm trying to do is essentially just be more social, put myself out there a bit more and try and work on socialising with people in public. But the problem is also because I live in quite a remote place, there really isn't many women, if any at all. So one thing I have to do is kind of optimize dating apps, which is something I'm doing in the minute. Find it very difficult because it's extremely dopaminergic, but that's what I'm working on at the minute, trying to find a system which doesn't compromise my work or my mental health, in which I can like kind of generate an influx of dates, right? And then I'll just go on regular dates. That's my current goals with that. It sounds a bit dehumanizing, and I don't like it either, but it's sort of like the only option I've got right now. You can't just wait for miracles to happen. You have to go out and make them happen, which is the reality of the game. But that's my sort of goals with all three of these, and I've literally just written them out on a whiteboard, and I always just look at them, make sure I'm on track. But fundamentally, it doesn't have to be a lonely journey, and that is the purpose of this podcast. I want to bring together like-minded men. So I release a podcast every week in which I not only break down my own personal goals and achievements of that week within these three categories, but also just general advice, the lessons that I personally learned along my journey. So if that interests you, gentlemen, subscribe, like, comment, all of that. Also, gentlemen, this is very humble beginnings. In the future, I will build a community, online, physical, and yeah, honestly, the sky's the limit for that. So gentlemen, it'd be a pleasure to have you around if you join me. Thank you very much for watching. Keep trying, and God bless.